Roy had come back to life 139 times. Every time he died, he woke up again on the exact same morning. He would relive everything that happened that day, which meant he knew every single detail. On his 139th reactivation, he woke up, ducked to dodge a knife, sat up, put on his shoes while evading another attack, stood up, and then leaned over to dodge once more. He knew every move this assassin would make, the exact timing, and the angle of every strike. He could dodge the attacks effortlessly, blocking the knife using nothing but his t-shirt. Roy poured himself a hot cup of coffee, took a sip, and waited for the assassin to get up before throwing the hot coffee straight into his face. Next up was the attack helicopter. A second assassin on board was about to fire a Gatling gun. Roy hid behind a pillar, knowing that the first burst of bullets would kill the first assassin. Exactly 8 seconds later, the Gatling gun jammed. Roy stepped out and threw a knife, planting it right in the shooter's head. Once that assassin fell, the Gatling gun malfunctioned, and its bullets slowly veered off to the right. Roy simply followed the clearing to walk away safely. Honestly, Roy had no idea why people were chasing him. He only knew that the helicopter would crash into his room in 8 seconds and that the rotor blades would fall 13 seconds after that. Oh, and one more thing, the helicopter would explode after 18 seconds. He jumped out the window and landed perfectly in a garbage truck. You probably didn't know this, but Roy had missed that garbage truck 22 times before. Once he landed on the street and a truck crushed him. Next, Roy stole a sports car. Since he kept coming back, he didn't care about laws anymore. The car's driver screamed the exact same phrase every single time, but nobody helped him. Roy also grabbed the driver's sunglasses. Then the third wave of assassins appeared, a pair of armed sisters. Roy had to escape quickly. They had killed him 14 times before, but it wasn't just these two. In a single day, Roy faced at least 7 waves of assassins. He had been blown up by the bomb maniac, kaboom, twice, killed 3 times by his own clone, and had died 8 times at the hands of the swordswoman, Guanyin. Roy had killed everyone else at least once, but Guanyin was just too strong. She always appeared out of nowhere, decapitating him with a swift strike. Afterward, she would proudly say, "I am Guanyin, and I has done this." Sometimes Roy managed to escape all these assassins. Guess what he did then? He didn't even try to figure out why they were hunting him or investigate the mystery behind it all. Instead, he would go to a bar, ask the bartender for 2 bottles of China's strongest liquor, and drink until he passed out. He had tried to fight back before, but there were too many assassins, all of them too strong. He had never lived past 12:47 p.m., so over time he just stopped trying. In fact, Roy had a pretty good idea of who had put him in this endless loop. It had to be his ex-wife, Jemma. Jemma was a top-level physicist at Dynow Labs. Just yesterday, Roy had visited Jemma at her lab. She seemed very nervous. She begged Roy for help but wouldn't say exactly what she needed. When he wasn't paying attention, she secretly cut a lock of his hair. Then she said, "I hope you stop wasting your life, pull yourself together, and become the man you used to be." Roy used to be in the special forces, but after leaving the military, he had nothing to do. Middle-aged and aimless, he fell into a downward spiral. That was why Jemma divorced him. But now, for some reason, Jemma had given him another chance. Oh no, it wasn't just a chance, it was unlimited chances. Roy had tried to call Jemma, but instead, her boss, Colonel Ventor, answered. Ventor said, "Jemma is already dead. You're next." So clearly Ventor was the one behind everything. But Roy still lacked the motivation to take Ventor down, because every day was set to hell mode, and he couldn't even beat the first level until his 145th resurrection. Roy hid in an underground shopping mall. By pure luck, he spotted his son, Joe. Roy hadn't been a good father. He hadn't seen Joe in a long time and felt guilty about it. So he decided to talk to his son. As he accompanied Joe out of the underground mall, he suddenly realized it was already 12:50. This was the longest he had ever survived. Why hadn't the assassins shown up during this time? Then Roy realized something. There was no cell phone signal underground. That meant he had a tracker implanted somewhere. Right then, the assassins appeared, closing in one by one. Roy's first reaction wasn't to run. Instead, he turned around and tightly hugged Joe. But it was already too late. All the assassins fired at once. Bullets tore through Roy's back. As he lay dying, Roy looked deeply at Joe. This death didn't end in pain. Instead, he saw surprise, sadness, and love in his son's eyes. And for the first time, Roy felt truly happy. Reactivation number 146. Roy grabbed the assassin tightly and demanded to know how he was being tracked. But the assassin was tough. He refused to talk, even unto death. So Roy had to figure it out himself. He went to see his friend Dave, the counter-surveillance expert, and asked, if someone were to implant a tracker in a human, where would it most likely be? Dave said, in the teeth. Suddenly, Roy remembered the attractive girl he met the night before, a dentist. During their date, she took Roy to her clinic and worked on his teeth. Roy rushed to the bathroom and started pulling out his teeth one by one. With every tooth he pulled, he took a swig of strong liquor. The pain was unbelievable. Finally, he found the tooth with the tracker. From that day on, Roy could predict the assassin's predictions. He used that tooth as bait to lure them out one by one. Then he amboxed them and defeated them easily. After beating all the assassins, his next target was Ventor. Ventor was at Dynow Labs. Roy drove straight there, flooring the gas pedal to smash through the entrance. Instead, he hit a wall, crashed, and died instantly. On his next reactivation, he tried again. Roy accelerated his car toward the inside. There were more than a dozen heavily armed security guards. But Roy wasn't actually in the car. Instead, he had rigged it with explosives, blowing the security checkpoint doors wide open. However, he didn't expect the chief of security to suddenly appear by his side. All right, time to try again. On his third attempt, Roy killed his assassin clone. He then disguised himself as the clone and used his ID card to sneak into the building. He got into the elevator, heading for the top floor. Inside the elevator, an armed guard asked for his ID. Roy scanned the card only to find out he didn't have clearance. The big guy killed Roy right away. Fourth attempt. Roy walked into the elevator and immediately shot the guard first. But when the doors opened, a group of security guards was standing there with guns drawn. Roy quickly shot himself in the head, leaving everyone shocked. Fifth attempt. Roy killed the guard again, but then he noticed a security camera in the elevator. No wonder the guards outside were always waiting for him. Sixth attempt. Roy disguised himself as a guard right from the start, finally avoiding detection by the camera. He made it to the hallway but found Guan, the swordswoman, waiting there. Roy had a gun and she had a sword. It was obvious who should win, right? But Guan moved like lightning. Bullets couldn't even touch her. She sliced Roy's gun in half, then swiftly cut off his head. Reactivation 152. Roy brought a submachine gun and fired rapidly at Guan. She kept dodging every bullet effortlessly, stabbing Roy in the stomach and decapitating him again. Reactivation 153. Roy took a rifle, but he still couldn't hit her. And once again, he lost his head. After dying more than 20 times, Roy finally understood that guns wouldn't beat Guan. He needed a sword. So Roy tracked down Dyfeng, a Chinese Wudong swordmaster who had been a world champion for 12 consecutive years. He begged her to teach him sword fighting. Since Roy was genuinely sincere, Dyfeng agreed. They started by practicing empty-handed, pretending their fingers were swords. Roy took a massive beating from Dyfeng. When practice ended each day, Roy would commit suicide and start over. Gradually, he began to understand the art of swordsmanship. Soon he leveled up to a wooden sword, but he kept taking heavy beatings. However, little by little, Roy's posture and strikes improved tremendously. On his 174th reactivation, Roy managed to hold his ground against Dyfeng for a few moves. After countless reactivations, he finally reached the point of using real swords. After just 7 moves, Roy defeated Dyfeng. Roy respectfully thanked Dyfeng and headed back to the Dynow Labs facility. There, he faced Guan once again. Roy calmly put down his gun and took a sword from the wall. Guan attacked quickly, but Roy stood firm as a mountain. In 2 moves, He sliced off a lock of Guan Yin's hair. They continued to fight. Roy placed his left hand behind his back, using only his right hand to wield the sword. This time, Guan Yin stood no chance. Time and again, Roy's blade grazed her throat until he finally defeated her. Then Colonel Ventor appeared, a white-haired old man who wasn't particularly good at fighting. Roy quickly subdued him. In pain, Ventor finally realized why Roy had become so powerful. It must have been his ex-wife, Jemma, who had activated Dynow Labs' ultimate technology before she died. The infinite reset machine. Ventor originally planned to use this technology to rule the world. But to stop him, Jemma had turned Roy into the guinea pig instead. With an evil smile, Ventor revealed, "I also sent someone to kill your son, Joe. It's probably already too late to save him." Roy panicked. He immediately finished Ventor off, got into a car, and rushed to save Joe. But he arrived too late, finding only Joe's lifeless body. Roy realized that despite countless reactivations, he had never managed to save his son. He completely broke down. How could he fail so terribly as a father? At that moment, a massive explosion erupted. In the distance, the infinite reset machine had overloaded and exploded, destroying the entire city. Roy revived once more. He had lost all hope in himself. Every wasted minute of his past life had led to today's never-ending tragedy. It was all his fault, so he stopped fighting and let the first assassin kill him. Once, twice, 3 times. 4 times. He died. He revived. He died. He revived. Until this time, Roy suddenly stood up again. He wanted to make things right. He wanted to pull himself together, just like Jemma had told him once. Roy went to see Joe, the son he had never spent time with. He talked to him, played video games, and bought him snacks. When the city exploded, Roy simply reset the day and spent another day with Joe. Bit by bit, Roy began to understand his son. He discovered the joy of being with Joe and gradually learned how to be a father. Until one day, Joe mentioned something shocking. His mom had called him that morning. Roy suddenly realized that Jemma was still alive every morning. He still had a chance to save her. Roy rushed back to the lab. After wiping out Ventor and his men, Roy checked the security footage. He saw that Jemma was killed at exactly 7:14 a.m. Roy revived every morning at exactly 7 a.m., which meant he had precisely 14 minutes each day to save Jemma. When Roy revived again, he raced against time. He boarded the helicopter and ordered the pilot to fly straight to the lab. He arrived at exactly 7:10. At 7:12, he used the Gatling gun to wipe out all the assassins in just 10 seconds. 2 minutes later, he burst into the lab, clearing out the enemies in his path. Just before Ventor could kill Jemma, Roy shot Ventor first. Roy had done it. He saved Jemma and defeated Ventor. Jemma hugged Roy tightly and whispered, "I knew you could do it." Wait, the world wasn't completely safe yet. The machine was still going to explode soon. Jemma said the only way to stop it was for someone to step into the core of the machine. But it was a huge gamble. The person who entered might disappear forever. Roy looked at Jemma and thought of his son, Joe. He was no longer the broken man he used to be. He was now a husband and a father, someone willing to sacrifice everything to protect his family. Without hesitation, Roy walked toward the machine. He stepped into its core and was swallowed by a blinding light. The screen faded to black.